he put Orla to death in 941 for supposed infidelity with her stepson, his son. Hello everyone, Bertie Brosnan of Bertie Brosnan Films here. Welcome back for episode 2 of the Brian Boru Series, Emperor of the Gael. Very excited to get stuck into episode 2. Last episode, the first one, was an introduction into the world and what the series was going to be about. We're going to get straight into this with Connecticut Mac Lorcan as King of the Dalcash, father of Brian Mac Connecticut. This is a time around 941 when Brian was born. It was a tragic time for the Dalcassian family, the tribe of Brian Boru of the Dalcassians. And we talked about it in episode 1. If you haven't seen it yet, it's going to be linked in the description. It's going to be linked in all different places. I'll make sure you get to see that. If you haven't seen it yet, make sure you go back and see it. Now, the Dalcassians get their name from Dalcash. It goes all the way back. In these times of medieval Ireland, it was important that your lineage was of great renown. We touched on the realities of potential lie to create this lineage. Who knows? But the point is, at this particular time, things were certainly starting to change. Connecticut was on the rise, but it would be his son Brian that would make the ultimate rise. But I am of great belief that his formative years, when he was growing up, this all played a part in his psychology. There's no doubt about it. The same year he was born, his older sister, Orla, was killed by Donnchad, the High King of Ireland at the time. Now, what we know from the records is that Orla, Brian Boru's older sister, who he never met because he was just born, I'm not too sure if she was killed directly before or after he was born, not 100% sure. He never met her. The reason why this happened, and this is something that Brian Boru would have done in his life later on, was marriage alliance. So Donnchad, who was actually son of Flann Sinna, was going to war with the rivals of the Dalcassians, the Eoghanachta of Cashel. This was the main tribal group of Munster. They were traditionally the kings of Munster, as we called it, Mumu at the time. Their king was Calacan of Cashel. This shows that the Dalcassian tribe was on the ascendancy. Please take a moment to help this video reach a bigger audience by liking, by leaving a comment, by hitting the notification bell. But also, if you watch all the way through, this really helps the video. Loads of people say this on videos. It becomes a little bit boring after a while. The reason why we say it is because this is how the videos actually get traction. This is what YouTube wants us to do. So that's why we're saying it to you. Take a moment, do that for me, and I would really appreciate it. Thank you so much. The reason why Donnchad married Orla was to cause some sort of rift within Munster, to cause problems for the Eoghanachta. Little did he realize that this potentially actually gave rise to the Dalcassians. The Dalcassians were seen as vassals, which they were, essentially coming from the Deshi Tushkart. They were coming from the Deshi tribe. So they were known as kind of vassals or less noble. Donnchad did set up this alliance, and this would have been probably an amazing time for the Dalcassians. But he put Orla to death in 941 for supposed infidelity with her stepson, his son. Yeah, if it happened, it happened. But I mean, she was put to death for this pretty severe sentence. This probably sent the Dalcassians into disarray for their plans. But there was not much they could do at the time. They couldn't take on the High King. But it certainly gave them confidence to tackle Cashel and to tackle the Eoghanachta clan. Because later on, Connecticut would go to war with the Eoghanachta. And this would ripple on into Brian's life when he was older, because the Dalcassians started becoming more and more confident. You can see it through Connecticut Mac Lorcan, Brian Boru's father, and also with the brothers of Brian Boru later on, Mahon, which we'll get into in a later episode. What's becoming apparent about the Dalcassian clan and about Brian Boru later in his life is that he takes advantage and they take advantage of scenarios that have arisen. Times when other clans are weakened, when it's a good time to strike. The art of war, essentially. Now, there's some people that would say, oh, Brian Boru, he went off and he ravaged Ulster because they were in disarray. Oh, Brian Boru took on Mael Shackneil because the northern Aenil clans wouldn't support him. Oh, Calacan was only taken on by the Dalcassian king because he was weakened at the time. What is wrong with that? Like, what becomes a consistent theme in the Dalcassian clan is taking the opportunity. This is a skill. This is actually a skill set. When you're striking when the opponent is weak, this is actually a skill set. And they do it over and over and over and over again. They weren't taken seriously, and in that, they were striking at the times when other clans were weakened. This is a skill. This is the art of war. It seems this killing of Orla, Brian Boru's older sister, Cenatic's daughter, through a number of other factors at play, may have created another tribal kingdom in the Dalcassians that grew over time with the bit between their teeth. And once they were able to gain the power of Munster through Brian, they began to charge for the High Kingship. This was never seen by Donnchad. But to talk a little bit about Brian Boru's life around this as well. So as we kind of move through his formative years, there was a lot of stuff going on because there was a lot of debt. By the time Brian was born, he had several brothers already killed in warfare. By the time he went to school on Innisfallen Island in my home county of Kerry, which is an unbelievable place, he would have returned home and faced the reality of losing more brothers. He would have come back, brothers that were playing with him, he'd come back and they'd be killed, either by Vikings or by tribal warfare. This was a big reality for life in those times. This was something that may have marked him psychologically and caused him to be a product of his environment. Brian Boru did go off and get an education on Innisfallen Island. This is where we meet Mael Sutan O'Carroll, who was the chief doctor and sage of Ireland, who would become that later on in his career and would be there signing Brian into the records as Emperor of the Gael. He would have met him first on Innisfallen Island as his teacher, and actually Mael Sutan O'Carroll is buried overlooking the same place as well in Killarney. It's a beautiful, unbelievably beautiful place. What would be interesting as well about Brian Boru's life is that he may have been protected and saved because of his education. He was kept away from the fort where there was a lot of Viking activity happening, a lot of tribal interwarfare, and he was kept away in Innisfallen where he was getting, it's theorized, a very, very strong education, very European education, learning about the courts of Charlemagne, learning about the Frankish courts, learning about Alexander, learning about the greats of old, learning Latin, learning languages, mathematics, astronomy. All of this was paramount in these times. These people were not stupid. These people were highly intelligent. Also as well, I'm not quite sure, but I don't think Loch Lane in Killarney, where Innisfallen is a huge hotspot for Viking activity. I may be wrong there, but it's not necessarily a huge hotspot, which would have saved Brian from a lot of danger. But who knows, maybe things were happening around that time that really annoyed him, pissed him off as well as a child, or at least shaped him in his formative years. So later on, it becomes a really complex story in Munster between Calacan, King of Cashel, and Cenatic, the King of Dalcash. There would be a big, huge battle, which would essentially set up North Munster versus South Munster, the O'Briens versus the McCarthys. This was the rudimentary beginnings of this war. This would be a huge loss for Cenatic, and they lost more brothers as well. Brian lost more brothers. This is what I'm talking about. He actually had 11. It's probably 11 half brothers. Some people say it's 13 or 12. I think it's actually 11. He actually had some other sisters as well. Not 100% sure what happened there. But as we said, Orla was killed. So by this time, he only had several brothers left. He was the youngest, so he was not in line for kingship. But it was getting closer and closer and closer as these brothers were being killed tragically in warfare and in battles and skirmishes, etc. It was terrible. It was a time of pure and utter bloodshed. It was tough, but in all of this there was education, there was flourishment, and there was culture, and this would show in Brian Boru's later life. He becomes very formal, diplomatic, and always of great renown, and I think this comes from his education early on at Innisfallen. This actual battle between his father and the King of Cashel would mimic him and Malachy more later on, because this would become almost like a traditional overthrowing of Munster and on the greater stage, on the Irish stage, because when Brian's older brother Mahon, which we'll get into in the next episode, he would overturn the Eoghanachta of Cashel, and this would also mimic itself in Brian's career when he overturns the Northern and Southern Neil's traditional hold on high kingship. So this is where I want to finish today's episode, because I want to keep these around 10 minutes to 15 minutes. So this is where we ended, between the tragic start of Brian Boru's life, 941, all the way up to the time when his father started taking on the Eoghanachtas of Cashel. In this time, he was getting his education, but he was also losing a lot of brothers. There was a lot of war, bloodshed, battles, but also a lot of culture, a lot of education. This would all form Brian's life, Brian's inner world, Brian's outer world. Also, if you're interested, I got some merch, Brian Boru merch. If you use the discount code YouTubeBertie because you've watched this video, you will get 10% off. And actually, all the links are in my description. If you want to buy the book, The Forgotten Prince, you can get a copy today. There may be a discount on at the moment. I'm not 100% sure. It depends when you're watching this, but hopefully there is. There definitely is going to be a discount for the month of half of April and the month of May 2025. Also, I do have signed copies available. There's a waiting list for them. If you want one and you're absolutely 100% certain you want one, these cost more than the regular copies, almost twice as much, because they have to be sent to me and then sent to you. So the postage is quite a lot. But I've gotten such great feedback for these. You get a personalized note, bookmark, and a signed copy sent to you. You just send me one payment and everything is done for you, and you get it into your letterbox. And you have that for life, a signed copy. I'm not going to be doing that forever, by the way. So if people get on it, get to be the first 100, maybe I'll stop after 100. Thank you so much for watching. All my links are in the description. You can also make a contribution by PayPal, Stripe, Buy Me a Coffee. All of this helps Bertie Brosnan Films grow. If you're interested in working with me, partnering with me, get in touch with me, bertie@bertiebrosnanfilms.com. All the links are at bertiebrosnanfilms.com. The links are in the description. And actually, the best comment on this video is going to get pinned as well. So for anybody interested in YouTube membership, there actually are memberships as well, where I answer every single comment, and videos like this get released to them 24 hours in advance, and you get badges and you get all that sort of stuff as well. Thank you so much for listening. Take care. God bless. Talk to you soon.